Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My best friend and I went to a small college prep school where everyone knew everyone else. Our graduating class only had 72 kids, so you couldn't really hide from anyone. Most of high school was pretty good for us except for this one guy who made our lives miserable. Let's call him the antagonist since he was such a pain. The antagonist wasn't exactly a bully in the traditional sense, but he was definitely a dick to anyone he thought was smarter than him. He constantly made jokes at our expense and pulled these stupid pranks that weren't funny to anyone except his buddies. I remember one time he made a bunch of fake party invitations with my parents' address on them, telling people I was throwing some big bash. My parents were not amused when random classmates started showing up at our door asking about a party that didn't exist. Another time he spread this ridiculous rumor that my best friend was dating this girl who everyone knew was a lesbian. Just cruel, pointless stuff that served no purpose except to make him feel superior. After graduation, my best friend and I went our separate ways for college but stayed close. He always had this entrepreneurial spirit, and in his late 20s, he founded his own company. And let me tell you, this guy hit it big. Not just successful, but seriously wealthy. The kind of success that gets written about in business magazines. My friend never let it go to his head. Instead of buying yachts and sports cars, he started giving back to the community in a major way. We both got involved in local charities, but he took it to another level. Recently, he spearheaded this massive project to build a science, technology, engineering and math center that would serve several area schools, including our old high school. The guy donated so much money that they put his name on the building. All this charity work and business success made him pretty well known locally. His company hired a marketing assistant who helped manage his public image, getting him featured in alumni newsletters and local news stories. They even took over his social media accounts because he was too busy running his business and didn't want to deal with the professional networking aspect himself. Meanwhile, the antagonist from high school took a completely different path. Thanks to social media, I got to watch his career trajectory unfold like a slow-motion train wreck. First, he tried to become a white rapper and DJ in the early 2000s, which was about as successful as you'd expect. Then he bounced around from car sales to some sketchy real estate investment scheme that sounded like mortgage fraud to me. I work in construction and real estate, so I can spot that kind of scam from miles away. After that failed, he moved on to some private equity-sounding investment group that probably wasn't much more legitimate than his real estate thing. His latest venture involves cryptocurrency, and he's gone full crypto bro with it. Throughout all these career changes, he's been heavily promoting himself on social media, trying to build this image of a successful entrepreneur. He even started one of those courses where he promised to teach people investment strategies for a fee, which is what scammers love to peddle. The guy had the nerve to slide into my direct messages multiple times over the years, trying to pitch me various so-called investment opportunities. I never responded to a single one. Something about his whole vibe just screamed scammer to me. So fast forward to last weekend. Our high school class finally managed to put together our 25th reunion. We hadn't had one since our poorly attended 5-year reunion, so this was a big deal. My successful friend generously offered to host part of the event at his house, which sits on several acres and has this beautiful barn that's perfect for entertaining. About 50 alumni showed up, plus spouses and around 20 kids. My friend, myself, our wives, and a few close friends claimed some chairs on a side patio and basically camped out there for the evening. We were drinking, catching up, and having a great time without feeling the need to work the room. Mid-evening, the antagonist spotted my friend and decided to make his move. He walked over with that fake confidence that screams, "Someone's about to pitch you something." My friend stayed calm and polite, exchanging basic pleasantries, but it didn't take long for the antagonist to show his true colors. The antagonist started telling my friend that he'd done well for himself, but then suggested he could make a lot more money in crypto. My friend cut him off mid-pitch with the most perfectly delivered line. He apologized and said he didn't catch who the antagonist was there with, asking if his wife was one of their classmates. You could see the antagonist get flustered. This wasn't how his grand approach was supposed to go. He told my friend his name and reminded him they were classmates, asking if he remembered how he used to give him a hard time back in school. My friend scratched his head with this genuinely confused expression and said he didn't really remember. He mentioned that he thought he had a pretty good memory of their class, but he couldn't recall the antagonist at all. Then my friend's expression turned serious, and he gave a small wave to the event planner who was working nearby. He told the antagonist that he got approached all the time like this because of his business, and while he understood it, this was his home and a private event. He turned to the event planner and asked her to take a moment to verify the guest list, explaining that he wasn't sure what was going on and thanking her for her help. The event planner put on this professional smile and told the antagonist she'd need to verify his identification against the guest list. She apologized and said she hoped he understood, then led him away. The antagonist followed her off, clearly frustrated that his big moment had been derailed. My friend sat back down, gave me a wink, and told our little group that it was unfortunate, but he had to be careful about these situations. One of our other classmates spoke up and confirmed that the guy was indeed from our class, mentioning his name again. My friend just shrugged and said he must not have interacted with him much back then smoothly changed the subject to something else entirely. About 20 minutes later, the antagonist came back with one of our female classmates who had helped organize the reunion weekend. She had been friends with the antagonist back in high school, so she was trying to help him save face. She told my friend she'd heard he said he didn't remember the antagonist, then explained that he had been in their class for all 4 years and had even played on the football team. My friend maintained that same calm, slightly confused expression and apologized again. He said that sometimes people just failed to leave an impression on him, then told her he hoped she enjoyed his home and had a lovely weekend. Then he turned to his wife with this dismissive finality and suggested they go check on the important people to make sure the kids were having fun. The emphasis on the kids being the important people was just perfect. The antagonist and the organizer walked away, and a few minutes later my phone buzzed with a text from my friend saying that the whole interaction had been fun for him. Watching someone who tormented us in high school get completely dismissed and treated like a nobody was incredibly satisfying. The antagonist spent years trying to build this image of success on social media, but when faced with actual success, he was revealed for what he really was. Just another guy trying to make a quick buck off someone else's achievements. My friend handled it with such class too. He didn't get angry or make a scene. He just acted like the antagonist was exactly what he had become over the years. Completely forgettable. My family always kept Jewish traditions when I was growing up. My parents weren't super strict, but we observed the important holidays and customs. When I moved away for college, I tried to keep up with some of the traditions that meant the most to me. One of those was having a mezuzah by my front door. After my freshman year in the dorms, I decided to get an apartment with a roommate I found through the college housing board. She seemed nice enough when we first met, clean, quiet, said she was studying business. What she didn't mention was her obsessive-compulsive disorder, which I found out about pretty quickly after we moved in together. At first, it wasn't too bad. She liked things organized in very specific ways, but we managed to work around each other's habits. She kept her stuff on her side, I kept mine on my side. She had her cleaning schedule, I had mine. It worked. About 3 months into living together, I realized I really wanted to put up a mezuzah by our front door. For those who don't know, it's this small rectangular case that holds a special scroll with Hebrew prayers. It's supposed to be on the door frame of your home, and it's a pretty important tradition in Judaism. I didn't want to just put it up without asking, since we shared the space. So one evening when we were both in the kitchen, I asked her if it would be okay to put up a mezuzah by our front door. I explained that it was a small religious item, like a little case that goes on the door frame, and that it was a Jewish tradition. She thought about it for a moment, then said it was fine as long as it wasn't huge or anything. I assured her it was tiny, maybe 3 inches long, and she probably wouldn't even notice it. She said, okay. So I ordered a simple, small mezuzah online. Nothing fancy, just a basic metal case. When it arrived, I was excited to finally have this piece of home with me. Here's where things got complicated. According to tradition, a mezuzah isn't supposed to hang completely straight up and down. It's supposed to tilt slightly toward the door at the top. It's been done this way for centuries. I carefully measured and marked where to put the screws, then hung it at the proper angle. I stepped back to admire it, feeling happy to have this connection to my faith and family traditions. About an hour later, my roommate came home from class. She walked through the front door and immediately stopped. She asked me what was wrong with it, and I asked what she meant. She pointed out that it looked crooked and said I had hung it wrong. I explained that it was supposed to be like that, tilted toward the door. She said that couldn't be right and that nothing should hang crooked like that. I could see her getting upset, so I tried to explain calmly that I knew it looked unusual, but this was the traditional way that had been done for hundreds of years in Jewish homes. She said she couldn't have it like that and needed it to be straight. I reminded her that I had asked if she was okay with me putting it up, and she had said yes. She shot back that she didn't know I was going to hang it wrong. She was starting to raise her voice, and I could see this was becoming a bigger issue than I expected. I offered to adjust it a little bit, but said I couldn't hang it completely straight because that would go against the religious tradition. She said she didn't care about the tradition and that it was making her crazy looking at it. I didn't want to fight, so I got my screwdriver and adjusted it to be less tilted, though still not completely straight. I thought this would be a good compromise. When she saw the adjustment, she calmed down a bit, but she was still clearly unhappy. She said it still wasn't right. I told her this was as straight as I could make it while still respecting my religious beliefs. She then said this was setting off her obsessive-compulsive disorder and that she couldn't focus on anything else when she saw it. I pointed out that I lived with her Christmas decorations covering half our living room every December and never said anything, and that this was just one tiny piece of metal. She argued that Christmas decorations were completely different because they were normal. I told her that this was normal for me, but she wasn't having it. She started screaming about how I was being inconsiderate and how I didn't understand what it was like to have obsessive-compulsive disorder. The whole thing was getting way out of hand. I finally said forget it and that I would just take it down. She said good. So I took down the mezuzah. I was pretty upset about it, but I didn't want to live with constant conflict. The problem was now there were 2 small holes in the wall where the screws had been. I called maintenance the next day and paid them to fill the holes. I figured that would be the end of it. The maintenance guy did a decent job, but the filler he used was just slightly off-white compared to the rest of the wall. You had to really look closely to notice it, but it was there. When my roommate got home and saw the filled holes, she lost it again. She complained that now there were patches on the wall that didn't match. I explained that I had paid to have them fixed, and that was the best maintenance could do. She said this was even worse than the crooked thing, and that now she was going to see these patches every time she walked through the door. I asked if she was serious and pointed out that I had taken down something that was important to me, paid to fix the wall, and she was still not happy. She said I didn't understand, and that this triggered her obsessive-compulsive disorder just as much. That's when I finally snapped. I told her she really just needed to get over it. The silence that followed was deafening. She stared at me like I had just slapped her. She said she couldn't believe I had just said that to someone with obsessive-compulsive disorder. I replied that I couldn't believe she had made me take down a religious item and then complained when I fixed the wall. She accused me of being completely insensitive to her mental health condition. I shot back that she was being completely insensitive to my religious beliefs. She walked off to her room and slammed the door. For the next few days, she barely spoke to me, except to tell me I was wrong for what I said. Here's the thing though, I started paying attention to her behavior after that. Suddenly, I noticed that she could ignore plenty of things that should have bothered her obsessive-compulsive disorder if they were things she wanted. The crooked picture frame in her room that had been there for months. The slightly uneven way she hung her towels. The fact that her desk drawer never closed completely. But somehow my tiny mezuzah and two barely visible wall patches were unbearable. A week later, she left a passive aggressive note saying she was moving out at the end of the semester because she couldn't live with someone who didn't respect mental health conditions. I found a new roommate pretty quickly, someone who actually thought the mezuzah was cool and asked questions about Jewish traditions. I'm a 17-year-old high school student with a condition called multiple sclerosis. For those who don't know, it's a disease that affects my nervous system and causes a bunch of different symptoms. Some days I can walk short distances with my cane, but most days I need my wheelchair to get around school safely. The fatigue and weakness in my legs can be unpredictable, which is why I qualified for special accommodations. I've been dealing with this condition since I was 14, and it took a while to get my parents to understand that I needed mobility aids. At first, they thought I was being dramatic or lazy, but after multiple doctor visits and tests, they finally accepted that this was real. Getting the wheelchair was actually a relief because it meant I could participate in school activities without worrying about collapsing or missing class due to exhaustion. The whole mess started on a Tuesday morning in my third period English class. I had rolled into the classroom like I always did, parking my wheelchair in the designated spot near the front. My English teacher, let's call her Karen, because she definitely fits that stereotype, had always given me weird looks, but I figured she was just one of those teachers who didn't understand disabilities. About 10 minutes into class, while we were discussing a novel we were reading, Karen suddenly stopped talking and stared directly at me. She told me she needed to speak with me in the hallway. Immediately, I was confused but rolled out of the classroom with her. The moment we were outside, she crossed her arms and got this smug look on her face. She told me that she had seen me at the mall on Saturday, walking around just fine with no wheelchair and no problems at all. I remembered that day. It was one of my better days, and my mom had convinced me to try walking through the mall for a short shopping trip. I used my cane and took frequent breaks, but I managed to walk for about 30 minutes before we had to leave because I was exhausted. I tried to explain that I have good days and bad days, and that's how my condition works. I told her that some days I can walk short distances, but most days I need my wheelchair. Karen scoffed and said that was convenient. She accused me of faking being disabled at school to get special treatment and attention, then magically getting better on weekends. I told her I wasn't faking anything and offered to have my doctor explain how multiple sclerosis works if she wanted to call him. She told me to save it and claimed she'd seen enough kids try to scam the system. She said I wasn't fooling anyone anymore. Before I could react, she grabbed the handles of my wheelchair and started trying to pull me up and out of it. She demanded that I get up right then and stop what she called my ridiculous act. I was terrified and tried to hold on to my wheelchair, but she was stronger and kept pulling on my arms. I begged her to stop and told her she couldn't do this because I needed my chair. She insisted that since I was fine at the mall, I could be fine at school too. She ordered me to get up and walk to the principal's office so we could sort it out properly. Other students in the hallway had started staring and I could hear some of them gasping. I was panicking because my legs felt weak that day, and I knew I couldn't support myself if she succeeded in getting me out of my chair. That's when my friend from another class came running over. He's a big guy on the football team, and he immediately stepped between Karen and me. He told her that she needed to step away from me right then because what she was doing wasn't okay. Karen told him to mind his own business and insisted that I was faking a disability and needed to be exposed. My friend said he didn't care what she thought and pointed out that she couldn't physically force someone out of their wheelchair because that was assault. By this point, a crowd had gathered and someone had gone to get the principal. Within minutes, our principal came walking down the hallway with the vice principal right behind him. Our principal doesn't mess around. He's former military and has zero tolerance for nonsense. The principal demanded to know what was going on. Karen immediately started talking, trying to justify her actions. She claimed she had caught me faking my disability because she saw me walking perfectly fine at the mall over the weekend, and now I was pretending to need a wheelchair at school for sympathy and special accommodations. The principal looked at Karen like she had lost her mind. He asked her if she had just admitted to physically trying to remove a student from her mobility device. Karen insisted that I didn't need it because I was perfectly capable of walking. The principal told her that wasn't her determination to make. He explained that even if a student can walk sometimes, that doesn't mean they're faking a disability because many conditions fluctuate day to day. He turned to me with a much gentler expression and asked if I was hurt or needed to go to the nurse. I told him I was okay, just shaken up, and that my arms were a little sore from where she had grabbed me. The principal said they were calling my parents and documenting the incident. He ordered Karen to his office immediately. The next few hours were a blur. My parents showed up within 20 minutes, absolutely furious. They brought my medical documentation and spoke with the principal for over an hour. Karen tried to defend herself, claiming she was just looking out for the school's resources and making sure students weren't taking advantage of the system. My mom, who's usually pretty calm, completely lost it when she heard what happened. She told Karen that she had physically assaulted her daughter based on an ignorant assumption about her medical condition. She demanded to know if Karen had any idea what multiple sclerosis actually was. Karen said she knew manipulation when she saw it. My dad announced that they were pressing charges for assault because what happened was completely unacceptable. The principal backed us up completely. Apparently, this wasn't Karen's first incident of overstepping boundaries with students, but it was definitely the most serious. He called the school district office immediately and started the process for her termination. Within a week, Karen was fired from her job. The school district's investigation found that she had violated multiple policies regarding student treatment and disability accommodations. My parents did press charges, and she ended up with a court date for assault. A few weeks later, we received a letter from the district's legal department. Apparently, Karen had tried to claim that she was being unfairly targeted for advocating for school resources and attempted to sue the district for wrongful termination. Her lawsuit was thrown out immediately when they saw the documentation of what she had done to me. I'm not the type to cause drama or make waves. I keep my head down, do my work well, and try to get along with everyone. That's probably why what happened next bothered me so much. It wasn't even happening to me directly, but watching it unfold made my blood boil. My coworker sits right next to me. She's been with the company for about 2 years, longer than me, and she's honestly one of the hardest workers I've ever seen. She comes in early, stays late when needed, and always goes above and beyond on her projects. She's the kind of person you want on your team. Sweet, professional, and really knows her stuff. The problem started about 18 months ago when our boss took over our department. He's one of those guys who thinks he's more important than he actually is, always talking about his connections, his big ideas, his vision for the company. But for someone who prides himself on being detail-oriented, he has this one massive blind spot. He cannot get my coworker's name right. Her name is straightforward, simple, easy to pronounce. But from day one, he's been calling her by the wrong name. Something similar sounding but completely different. It would be like if someone named Sarah kept getting called Sandra, or if Michael kept getting called Mitchell. At first, we thought it was just a new boss mistake. Happens all the time, right? So my coworker politely corrected him. She told him that her name was actually her real name, not the wrong name he kept using. He apologized and said he'd remember, but then it happened again the next day, and the day after that. My coworker corrected him again, still being polite about it. She gave him another friendly reminder about what her actual name was. He thanked her and said he'd remember. This went on for weeks, then months. I started jumping in to help. I told him that her name was her real name, not what he kept calling her. He said he knew that, but he clearly didn't know that because he kept doing it. In meetings, in emails, when talking to other people about her work. It got to the point where other co-workers started correcting him too. Another co-worker would tell him that her name was actually her real name. The boss would get defensive and insist that he knew what her name was. No, he clearly didn't. He started getting defensive about it. Like we were the ones with the problem. He'd wave us off or give us this look like we were being ridiculous for correcting him. My co-worker tried everything. She sent him an email with her name clearly displayed in the signature. She put a nameplate on her desk. She even introduced herself by her real name in meetings where he was present. Nothing worked. Watching how it affected her was really frustrating. She's naturally a confident person, but after months of this, I could see it wearing her down. She started second-guessing herself in meetings. She'd hesitate before speaking up. It was like he was slowly erasing her identity, one wrong name at a time. Other people in the office started noticing too. During lunch breaks, people would talk about it. Someone from accounting asked if he seriously still didn't know her name. I told him no, and that we'd corrected him probably 100 times. They said it was so disrespectful. And it was disrespectful. Whether he was doing it on purpose or not, it showed a complete lack of regard for her as a person. How hard is it to remember someone's name, especially someone who works directly under you? But my coworker kept being professional about it. She never lost her temper, never made a scene. She just kept doing excellent work and hoping things would improve. Then came the promotion opportunity. Our department had been growing and they needed someone to step up to a senior role. My coworker was the obvious choice. She had the experience, the skills, and the track record. Everyone knew she deserved it. When the boss announced that she was getting promoted, we were all thrilled for her. Finally, some recognition for all her hard work. But then I saw the paperwork. He had written everything using the wrong name. The promotion letter, the announcement that was going to go out to the entire company, even the new business cards he'd ordered. Everything had the wrong name on it. My coworker saw it too. For a moment, I thought she might finally lose it. But instead, she got this look in her eyes, a calculating look. She asked him if he wanted her to sign all of these documents. He said yes, that it was just standard paperwork for the promotion. She asked if he was sure about the name written on everything. He said of course he was sure, that he'd been working with her for over a year. That's when she did something brilliant. Instead of correcting him one more time, she just signed everything. But she signed it exactly as he had written it, with the wrong name. A few days later, the boss came storming out of his office looking confused and angry. He announced that there seemed to be some kind of mix-up with payroll. My co-worker asked what kind of mix-up. He explained that payroll was saying they couldn't process her promotion because the person named on the documents didn't exist in their system. She said that was strange, since she had signed exactly what he gave her. I had to bite my lip to keep from smiling. This was beautiful. The boss had to call payroll to sort it out. My coworker went with him, and later she told me how that conversation went. The payroll person said they were looking at the documents, but they didn't see anyone by that name in their employee database. The boss insisted that she'd been working there for 2 years. The payroll person asked under what name. The boss gave the wrong name again. My coworker jumped in and said she thought there might be some confusion. She explained that her legal name, the one she was hired under, and the one on all her tax documents, was her real name. She told them that her boss had been calling her by the wrong name for over a year now, insisting that was her name even though she'd corrected him many times. The silence that followed was apparently deafening. The payroll person looked at the boss like he'd grown a second head. They asked if he'd really been calling her by the wrong name for a year. The boss stammered that there must be some confusion. The payroll person said the confusion seemed to be on his end, and that they'd get the correct paperwork drawn up with her actual legal name. Word spread through the office like wildfire. By the end of the day, everyone knew what had happened. People were talking about it in the break room, by the water cooler, in the elevators. Some people thought it was hilarious. Others were appalled that a manager could be so careless and disrespectful. Watching the boss try to save face over the next few days was entertaining. He kept trying to act like it was no big deal, just a simple mistake. He'd ask people if these things didn't just happen sometimes, but nobody was buying it. How do you call someone by the wrong name for over a year after being corrected dozens of times and then claim it was just a mistake? My co-worker got her promotion, with her correct name on all the paperwork this time. The boss seemed to finally learn her real name after that, probably because he was too embarrassed to get it wrong again. The whole thing became office legend. Whenever someone new joined the team, someone would eventually tell them the story about the boss who couldn't remember names. It became a running joke, but also a warning about the importance of treating people with basic respect. The boss never acknowledged what had happened or apologized for the year of getting her name wrong. He just pretended like everything was normal and moved on. But everyone in the office knew better. They'd seen him get completely embarrassed because of his own stubbornness and inability to admit when he was wrong. My coworker handled the whole thing with such grace. She got her revenge, but she did it in a way that was perfectly professional. She didn't have to raise her voice or cause a scene. She just let his own incompetence speak for itself. You could tell the experience had shaken his confidence. After that, you could see him struggle with names. He'd pause for a split second when addressing someone like he was making sure he had it right. But did he learn his lesson? I honestly don't think so. I was 22 and had just moved to New York City with basically nothing but a suitcase and big dreams of making it as an actor. Like every other hopeful performer in the city, I needed a flexible job that would let me go to auditions during the day. That's how I ended up working at the Starbucks in Union Square. If you've never worked in food service in Manhattan, let me tell you, it's like being thrown into a gladiator arena every single day. The customers are stressed, impatient, and many of them treat service workers like we're invisible or beneath them. But I needed the job badly. My tiny studio apartment in Queens cost more per month than most people's mortgages, and I was already behind on rent. The Union Square location was especially brutal because it caught everyone, tourists, business people, college students, and locals all mixed together in one chaotic mess. During rush hours, the line would snake around the store and out the door. Everyone was always in a hurry, always angry about wait times, and always ready to take their frustrations out on whoever was behind the counter. I've been working there for about 6 months when this particular incident happened. By then, I'd developed pretty thick skin and learned to just smile and nod through most customer complaints. The management had drilled into us that the customer was always right even when they were clearly wrong. We were supposed to remake drinks without question, apologize profusely for any perceived mistakes, and basically grovel to keep people happy. It was a Tuesday morning around 10:30, so we'd just gotten through the worst of the morning rush. I was working the espresso machine, which was my favorite position because I actually enjoyed making the drinks. There's something satisfying about perfecting the foam art and getting the temperature just right. This guy walks up to the counter, probably in his 40s, wearing an expensive-looking suit, carrying a briefcase. He had this look on his face like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world than talking to me. He didn't make eye contact, didn't say hello, just launched right into his order with this incredibly condescending tone. He told me he needed a grande latte, very hot, at exactly 180 degrees. His voice was sharp and impatient, like he was talking to someone who couldn't possibly understand such a complex request. Now, most customers don't know the technical details about milk temperature, so when someone throws out a specific number like that, they're usually trying to show off or prove they know more than the barista. The standard temperature we steam milk to is between 150 and 170 degrees. 180 is definitely on the hot side, but not unreasonable. I told him that wouldn't be a problem and that I'd make him a grande latte, extra hot, right away. I made his drink exactly to specification. All our milk steaming pitchers have built-in thermometers, so I knew for a fact that I hit 180 degrees on the dot. I even double-checked because this guy has seemed like the type who would complain. I handed him the drink with a smile. He immediately told me the coffee wasn't hot enough and reminded me that he had specifically asked for 180 degrees. He said this before he'd even taken a sip, just held the cup for maybe 3 seconds and decided it wasn't hot enough based on, I don't know, his psychic coffee temperature powers. I apologized and told him I could definitely remake it for him. I asked him to confirm that he wanted it at 180 degrees, just to be sure. He snapped that yes, that's what he had said, and asked if we people didn't listen. He went on to complain that he had a very important meeting and didn't have time for incompetence. The way he said, "You people made my blood boil," but I kept my customer service smile plastered on my face. I took the drink back and walked over to the espresso machine. A few of my co-workers had noticed the interaction and were giving me sympathetic looks. When I started making his new drink, I had a moment of inspiration. If this guy wanted to be a difficult customer and treat me like garbage, then he was going to get exactly what he asked for. I steamed that milk to 220 degrees, hot enough to literally scald someone's mouth if they weren't careful. I walked back over and handed him the fresh cup, maintaining perfect eye contact and my sweetest customer service voice. I told him that here was his grande latte at exactly the temperature he had requested, and that I had made sure it was extra hot this time. He took the cup from me with this smug, satisfied expression, like he'd just taught the stupid barista an important lesson. Without hesitation, he brought the cup up to his lips and took a big sip. The reaction was immediate and absolutely beautiful. His eyes went wide, his face turned red, and I could see him trying not to spit the coffee everywhere. He started making these little choking sounds, and his eyes were watering. For a split second, I thought he might actually complain again, but then he seemed to realize that he'd gotten exactly what he'd demanded. He stood there for a moment, clearly in pain but trying to maintain his dignity. His tongue was probably completely burned, but what could he say? He'd specifically asked for the coffee to be hotter, and I delivered exactly what he wanted. He managed to croak out a quiet thank you in a much softer, slightly hoarse voice. You could tell his mouth was burning. He turned around and walked away, holding the cup very carefully and not attempting to drink any more of it. I watched him through the window when he stood outside for several minutes, clearly waiting for the coffee to cool down before he could drink it. My manager had been watching the whole thing from behind the espresso machine. When the customer left, she came over with this knowing smile. She asked me if I had really steamed that milk to 220 degrees. I told her that he had asked for it hot, and I just wanted to make sure he got exactly what he ordered. She laughed and said that she hadn't seen anything, but maybe I shouldn't make a habit of it. About a week later, the same guy came in again. This time, he was much more polite. He said please and thank you, made eye contact, and when he ordered his latte, he just asked for it at regular temperature. He even left a tip. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.